Joining us now, Westpac senior economist Matthew Hassan is with me now. Matt, the important aspect of this is that the inflation's still there. And even as we've heard from Michelle Bullock in recent times, it's sticky. It's in the services industry. So it's what happens to get rid of that inflation.
Yeah, I think so. So today's number, a welcome surprise, but not one we can really trust at this stage. The trim mean number 5.3 is still north of 5% at this stage. We wanted something with a four handle. We've got a headline with a four handle, but as I said, it's not that convincing. There were some one-offs in there. The increase in Commonwealth rental assistance looked to have a big dent on rents, which is counterintuitive when we know rents are still rising pretty strongly. If you strip that out, they're still rising pretty strongly.
Yes.
Other service components, holiday travel was down 7% price-wise in the month, but we're getting a feel for this with the monthly data that some of these components are really seasonal, and that's probably a seasonal effect, not something you can rely on.
And so you get the sense that before the Reserve Bank really makes, sort of its key decisions, it wants to see quarterly inflation because it has the full basket of goods in it. It gives a more accurate picture as to where the inflationary trend is.
That's right. So the monthly indicator, it may be right, it may be wrong. We're only going to really know definitively when we get the full quarterly picture. That's not going to come out till late January ahead of the February RBA meeting. That's what the RBA is going to be keying off before it passes judgment. The October month, nice headline surprise. Some of the details not really that convincing, and certainly it's not enough for the RBA.
So the interesting aspect, if we look at our cash rate versus the inflation rate versus the rest of the world, most of the central banks have got their cash rates above their inflation rate. And that's something ultimately the Reserve Bank has to have happen. Either the inflation rate comes down or interest rates go up.
Well, yeah, to some extent. Obviously, I don't think they'll be running a rule over real interest rates in quite that mechanical a way. But certainly, you're right. If the inflation rate doesn't track down into the fours, into the threes, then we've got a problem on our hands, and that's telling the RBA that they'll need to move significantly higher. We still think inflation will come down, but it's judging, is it coming down fast enough at this stage?
And so that goes to the heart of services inflation. It goes to the wages that are coming through and the claims that are going to come through over the next 12 months. And we've just talked about industrial relations there as a key aspect of this, because these are all, again, things that Reserve Bank will watch. Will it change when the new Monetary Policy Board starts to come together sometime in the middle of next year? Or will they simply be looking at exactly the same measures that the current Reserve Bank Board is looking at?
I think they're just going quarter to quarter at the moment. They've flagged no tolerance for any more misses on the inflation target, the timing of returning to sub 3%. They're very uncertain around how this inflation piece is going to play out near term. I think from the minutes you got a flavour that the November rate hike wasn't just about that inflation result, but it was a concern that they may be further away from their target come the December quarter wash up for the CPI.
OK, so take me to even retail sales were pretty weak for October. That played into the inflation being relatively weak in October. But then you go to these Black Friday sales, and according to all our information, it's boomed. And Jerry Harvey says it, you've got Shopify saying it, you've got Amazon saying it, that really people went nuts during that time. That does nothing for inflation or indeed the mood of the Reserve Bank.
Well, I think we need to have a bit of a breath around these Black Friday results, because there could be a couple of things going on. So firstly, everyone's rushing to report the number, understandably, but we need to get the real sort of read on it, and we'll have some card data out later this week. That'll be the first real comprehensive picture around the Black Friday sales and how they've gone. The other thing to bear in mind is that I think people are totally in economising mode. The sentiment is absolutely rock bottom at the moment. They are facing into cost of living pressures and expecting more down the pike. So they're going to be doing everything they can to get a bargain. They may be hitting these sales hard because they're pulling forward their spending that might otherwise have happened on Super Saturday prior to Christmas or the Black Friday sales. So I think, firstly, how these sales land is important, but just as important is how demand tapers post Black Friday. Does it really fall back in a hole? And is that telling you the demand side is not quite there?
So the irony of that is, especially for retailers, cutting prices, deflation if you like, is a way to stimulate the demand. So maybe that's even a message going to Christmas and beyond. And we watch the sales during that period of time to see whether that's what consumers actually respond to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might be a zero-sum game for some retailers. They price aggressively, they get a bit of a bump on demand, but then the back end's really weak and they're no better off. So it's a pretty hard one tactically for retailers to play into.
I'll tell you what, Matthew Hassan, always great to see you, and many thanks for your time today. Matthew Hassan there from Westpac.